All right, Sony Open one and done. Love it. First one and done video of the year. A little bit different this year because it's only a single entry on Gups Corner, so I don't have two lineups to kind of talk you through. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to deep dive into like who I think is a really good play this week. That's kind of what the DFS video is for, which I'll link to right here, and you can go back and watch that and see who I really like. This video will most likely just be talking strategy about the actual one and done contest. The tool that I use is a one and done tool that I created. It's on my site, dfsondemand.com. I think you should be a full member of the site because you get access to all of the great tools that you see on this YouTube channel. But if you only want access to this tool, you can do that as well. It's $9 a year. I had this great idea where I was going to make it $1 a month only to access this tool for the 9 months of the golf season. And then I realized that my payment processor takes 35 cents on every transaction, no matter what the cost is. So I was like, nah, maybe not. So $9 for the whole year if you just only want this tool, which I think is really cool. So let's jump into it. So this week's Sony Open, Justin Thomas coming off the win at the Century Tournament of Champions. You know what? Let me save that little spiel. Let's go to the full field values, and what you're looking at right now is a handful of things. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll try to describe this to you. So what I've done is I've created an expected value, a monetary amount of if this tournament was played infinity times, how much money on average would these golfers earn in each event. And it is very clear that Justin Thomas at $229,000 is head and shoulders above the rest of the field in terms of expected value. The next closest person to him is Webb Simpson at $124,000. Now, that takes into account a plethora of things, but you can adjust the date range. So if you wanted to say, I don't want to look, I'm doing full long-term right now. So if you go more recently, like Matt Kuchar's value gets better, Lonto Griffin's gets better, Brendan Todd's gets better. You can kind of do this just for 2019. You can kind of see how this adjusts, but I'm just going to keep it locked here on the full range, which is since the end of 2017. So basically the last 2 seasons or 2 years, excuse me. And Justin Thomas very significantly ahead of the rest of the field here, but I do think that there's a couple of other good options. Now, on the right-hand side, you'll see what last year's results were. So not only the winnings for each golfer, but how often they were picked. And Justin Thomas, far and away, the #1 most picked golfer last year. And I don't think that's going to change. Before I jump into that, you can see up here in the upper right hand, this is event number 1, segment number 1. This purse, $6.6 million, is the 29th out of 36 tournaments, so a relatively small purse. So you have to decide if you want to burn Justin Thomas in the first event of the year in one of the smaller prize pools. Historically, I believe you should just burn your stud. You should not try to take someone from the middle of the pack here and just try to get lucky with a win. I think there are 5 or 6 really valuable options this week that you could make a pretty good case for. So they're Justin Thomas, Patrick Reed is one of the favorites, Webb Simpson, Colin Morikawa, Hideki, Matt Kuchar, Sung Jae, and Joaquin Neiman. I won't go further than that. I'll be taking one of those, 8 guys. I think they have the most win equity, obviously, but there's different ways to play them. So let's look at Justin Thomas, who last year was owned by 846 owners. This was by far the tournament that he was used the most in, and it makes sense because if you look at it last year, he was coming in where he had won. He wasn't the defending champion. Is that correct? He was not the defending champion. Patton Kizzire was. But we had seen him win 2 years ago, and he shot a 59 in the opening round. So now this year, he still has that victory underneath his belt 3 years ago, and he just won the Tournament of Champions. I fully expect Justin Thomas to be the highest owned golfer as everyone tries to get out on a really good, a good foot and bank some money early. And he is not a bad play. He is clearly a very good play. But to me, if you look at this and you look at the expected value for the rest of the year, I've got him for about $229,000 of expected value in week number 1. But if you play him in any of the majors or any of the other bigger events throughout the year where the purses are much larger, that expected value jumps. So I get it to 450,000 at the Players Championship. Now, there's obviously going to be a lot of other great players in that field. But even playing him, let's say here, WGC Mexico, 372,000. When you're talking about a guy who has this big of a share of the expected value, it really is important where you play him. So the difference between the expected value that JT has this week and some of the other weeks can be $230,000. Like, that's a big difference. Plus, throw in the fact that literally almost everyone is going to play him this week. I'm probably going to save JT. And if you kind of look at last year, which last year might not be great because he had an injury, but you could have played JT almost anywhere else on the schedule and gotten him at a really good number, except for here. Like, he wasn't owned. The next closest one was that WGC Mexico, 339 picks. But other than that, you could have gotten him under 100 a handful of times, a bunch of times. So I'm going to save JT. Now, when you look at someone like Webb Simpson, who is 12-1 to win this event, I think he becomes a lot more compelling. Okay, so here's Webb. And I've got him for $124,000 of expected value this week, which is the second best in the field. But when you look at, should you use Webb this week or should you use him in another week? Even in his best weeks, he only, quote unquote, only gets to 240,000. So you're only giving up, in theory, $120,000 of expected value between this week and Webb's best week. For JT, it's like 250,000. So the gap is much smaller, and he is still one of the favorites to actually go out and win this golf tournament. That, to me, is a much more compelling use of a golfer. So if we look at Webb is a really interesting one and done player. So if you look at his ownership last year, it spikes. Okay. So all of these events, like, because Webb is one of the better players in the world, he's like top 12 in the world, that plays some of these smaller events. So you'll see, like, his ownership spikes at the Wyndham, 378 people, 362 at the RBC Canadian, 326 at Valspar, 285 at Honda, 230 at Waste Management. And then, like, there are some weeks where no one owns him. He's like under 10 picks, under 20 picks. It just absolutely spikes because there's going to be like 5 weeks that he is one of the 3 best golfers in the field. And we have that this week. So I think it's a really compelling case to make because I couldn't kill you for either way on Webb. So I think playing JT's probably, I don't want to say it's wrong, but I don't think it's the greatest idea. Playing Webb this week, I like it. I could also argue to save him for, I think everyone's going to play him at the Wyndham. They might play him at like RBC, Heritage, something like that, where he might be 8-1. But this feels like a sneaky good spot for Webb. I might end up rostering him here. I'm not quite sure yet, but you can see there's really only designated spots for Webb. There's probably 5 or 6 of them. I won't be playing Patrick Reed. Go watch a DFS video. I think he's fool's gold at the moment. Hideki's really interesting here. Hideki would be, so there is a strategy in the world of one and dones, which is basically just like, look at the top 5 odds guys, the top 5 favorites, and pick the guy you think is going to be least owned. It honestly works out pretty well because they're all elite golfers, and you just want to be the one who just fades everybody else, right? Hideki's the guy this week. Hideki's the guy that's going to win or lose GPPs, and he's certainly the guy that is going to be like 30 people are going to pick Hideki this week. Like, if you look at this, so last year at the Sony, 33 picks of Hideki. Could you, like, if you gave me the 6th best favorite, the 6th shortest odds, or fourth shortest odds, excuse me, an elite golfer like Hideki Matsuyama, and said 30 people are going to pick him this week, I would jump at that almost every single time. The problem is he's been terrible here, which is why only 30 people are going to pick him. But you can see, again, very designated spots for Hideki, and it's always the Waste Management. Everyone's waiting for the Waste Management to play Hideki. So if you play him anywhere else, you are going to be the contrarian here. So 33 picked him at the Sony, 43 at Farmers, 883 at the Waste Management. It's kind of insane. And then you kind of get him, there's a handful of other spots that you can use him. But I think you'd be in a really interesting leverage spot with Hideki this week if he can have a good one. I obviously don't know that, but he's your leverage spot. The other guys I'd even remotely consider, Morikawa. These younger guys like Morikawa, Sungjae, and Joaquin Neiman, they're really tough because we don't have like a huge sample size on them. I can show you Sungjae, I think. Yeah, so we don't even have, or actually it's probably because his name is spelled differently. I'll update Sungjae so that I can show you that. I can show you Joaquin Neiman here. All right, so here's Neiman, and what's interesting is, yeah, you can see again, oops, sorry, I'll get myself out of the way here. You can see there's going to be like three places people use him. It's going to be John Deere, it's going to be 3M, it's going to be Rocket Mortgage. He's almost like a guy that you wait and put the reserves on, but he's playing really, really well right now. I could argue Joaquin here. I could argue Sungjae here. And Morikawa's tough because we haven't seen as much of him, but he's really, really good. So I'm kind of stuck. I think that out of that group, there's only really a handful that I want to play. I'm not messing with anybody else, even though I like them for fantasy or other purposes. I think JT's probably wrong. I think Hideki is probably too risky for me, and I don't think I need to go there. I think I can differentiate. I think as long as you don't take JT, you're going to be pretty differentiated. I love the idea of Webb. I just don't know where he's going to come in. So I'm between Webb. I'm probably between Webb and Morikawa. I think this is a really good course setup for Morikawa because it's short, and I think that I have the benefit of knowing I can use Webb later. So I believe I will use Morikawa. Don't hold me to that because by the time lock happens, I might have changed my mind. But I'm very much in the camp of Webb or Morikawa, and I couldn't blame you for either one of those. I think you have big cojones if you go out and play Hideki. I commend you. Joaquin, Sungjae, great, no problem. Which means Justin Thomas will win this thing and make me look like a fool. But there you go. That's the one and done preview for this week's Sony Open. Let me know where you're going. Very interested to see if it's just going to be JT chalk, and 1,000 guys are going to pick him. Tweet me. It is at RickRunGood. I'll talk to you guys next time.